The recording should never have existed. Marcus Reynolds had been a royal guard for 11 years. He had stood outside Parliament during state visits. He had protected visiting dignitaries. He had learned to become invisible, to hear nothing, to see nothing. But on a cold Tuesday morning in November, everything he thought he knew about duty would be tested. It started with a broken security camera. Marcus was assigned to the east corridor of Clarence House that morning. The hallway was narrow, lined with oil paintings of ancestors whose eyes seemed to follow movement. At 9:47 a.m., his radio crackled. The security office needed him to check camera 5. It had gone offline. He walked down the corridor, his boots silent on the Persian carpet. The camera was mounted near a set of double doors. Marcus pulled out his tablet to run diagnostics. That's when he heard the voice. "I need you to listen very carefully." Marcus froze. The voice came from behind the double doors. It was unmistakable. He had heard it hundreds of times during briefings and official events. But this tone was different. Sharper, colder. If you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button. You won't believe where this goes next. Marcus knew he should leave. Protocol was clear. If a royal was in a private conversation, guards were to move away to grant distance. But something in that voice held him there. Something that made his chest tighten. "The Wales family is next," the voice continued. Marcus's blood went cold. His hand instinctively moved to the small recording device on his vest. Every guard wore one. It was meant for security incidents, for evidence if something went wrong during protection duty. His thumb hovered over the button. "I don't care what it takes," the voice said. "The public loves them now, but public opinion can shift." "It always does," another voice responded, quieter, harder to hear. "Male, professional?" "Ma'am, what exactly are you proposing?" "I'm proposing we remind people who the future queen consort is, who stands beside the king, not some perfect little family in Kensington who gets every magazine cover." Marcus pressed the record button. His heart hammered against his ribs. This was wrong. Everything about this moment was wrong. He was violating a dozen protocols. He could lose his job. Worse. But something deeper than duty took over. Some instinct that whispered this moment was too important to let disappear into silence. "The children," the male voice said carefully. "Surely not the children. I'm not a monster, David." The voice softened slightly, but the edge remained. "But their parents? The golden couple? People need to see cracks. Real ones. And we have enough material to make that happen." Marcus's finger stayed on the record button. Through the door, he could hear papers shuffling, footsteps. "I'll have the files compiled by Friday," the male voice said. "Good, and David?" This conversation never happened. They were standing up. The meeting was ending. He had maybe 30 seconds before that door would open. He released the record button and moved. His training kicked in. He walked quickly but calmly back toward the camera, pulling tools from his belt. When the double doors opened 20 seconds later, Marcus was standing on a ladder, apparently adjusting the camera mount. Two figures emerged. One was a lawyer Marcus had seen before, carrying a leather briefcase. The other didn't look his way, didn't acknowledge his existence, but Marcus's hands shook as he twisted a screw that didn't need. Twisting because he knew what he had just recorded could destroy everything. Asterisk Marcus didn't sleep that night. He lived alone in a small flat in Brixton, 40 minutes from Clarence House. The recording device sat on his kitchen table like a bomb waiting to detonate. He had transferred the audio file to his laptop, listened to it 4 times. Each time, the words felt heavier. "The Wales family is next." Marcus made tea he didn't drink. He paced his small living room. Through his window, London glowed in the darkness, millions of people sleeping peacefully. Unaware that one guard held a secret that could shatter the monarchy, by dawn, Marcus had made his decision. He would delete the file. Forget what he heard. He had no proof it meant anything sinister anyway. Maybe it was just palace politics. Petty jealousy. Nothing more. He reached for his laptop, finger hovering over the delete key. Then his phone buzzed. A news alert. His stomach dropped as he read the headline. Kate Middleton's private medical records leaked online, palace launches. Investigation. Marcus's hands went numb. The article detailed how sensitive medical information about the Princess of Wales had appeared on social media overnight. Private details. Embarrassing details. Nothing life-threatening, but enough to humiliate. Enough to make people whisper. The timing couldn't be coincidence. Marcus thought about the voice behind those doors. We have enough material to make that happen. He thought about the lawyer. I'll have the files compiled by Friday. That conversation had happened on Tuesday. Today was Saturday. Marcus sat back in his chair, his mind racing. If he was right, this was just the beginning. The medical records were the first crack. There would be more. The voice had promised more. His phone rang. Unknown number. Marcus stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Marcus Reynolds? The voice was clipped. Official. Yes. This is Deputy Chief Bernard from Palace Security. We need you to come in for a routine interview this morning. Regarding the camera malfunction on Tuesday, Marcus's throat went dry. A routine interview? Standard procedure when equipment fails near sensitive areas. Nothing to worry about. Can you be here in an hour? Of course. The line went dead. Marcus looked at his laptop screen. At the audio file icon sitting in his downloads folder, they knew. Somehow they knew he had been there. Maybe they had seen him on another camera. Maybe someone had reported him standing too close to those doors. His hands shook as he grabbed a USB drive from his desk drawer. He copied the file, then copied it again to his phone. Then he did something that surprised himself. He sent the file to his email, drafted but not sent. Scheduled to automatically send to 3 journalists if he didn't cancel it within 48 hours. Insurance. The drive to Clarence House felt like driving to his execution. Marcus parked in the guard lot and walked through security. Everything looked normal. Guards nodded to him. No one seemed suspicious. But Marcus felt eyes on him everywhere. Deputy Chief Bernard's office was on the 3rd floor. Marcus had only been there once before, years ago, during a commendation ceremony. The deputy chief was a hard man, former military, with eyes that missed nothing. Sit down, Marcus, Bernard said, without looking up from paperwork. Marcus sat. The chair was uncomfortable. Positioned so the morning sun hit directly in his eyes through the window behind Bernard's desk. Interrogation positioning? The camera that malfunctioned on Tuesday, Bernard began, finally looking up. You fixed it? Yes, sir. Loose connection. And you were there how long? 10, maybe 15 minutes. Bernard leaned back in his chair. And during those 15 minutes, did you see or hear anything unusual? Marcus's pulse hammered in his ears. This was it. The moment that would define everything. He could lie. Protect himself. Go back to being invisible. Or he could tell the truth and destroy his life. No, sir, Marcus said. Nothing unusual. Bernard watched him for a long moment. Too long. Then he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Good. That's what I thought. He slid a piece of paper across the desk. This is a standard non-disclosure reminder. Just sign it. Confirms you understand the sensitivity of your position. Marcus picked up the pen. The paper was dense with legal language. But one phrase stood out. Any unauthorized recording or disclosure of private conversations is grounds for immediate termination and potential criminal prosecution. They knew Marcus signed his name, keeping his hands steady through sheer will. You're a good guard? Marcus Bernard said as Marcus stood to leave. 11 years of exemplary service. It would be a shame to throw that away over something foolish. Yes. Sir. Marcus walked out of that office knowing his 48-hour clock was ticking and knowing that he had just become the most dangerous person in the palace. The second leak happened on Monday. Marcus was standing post outside the state dining room when his phone vibrated in his pocket. He couldn't check it during duty, but he felt it buzz again. And again. By the time his shift ended at 6 p.m., he had 17 notifications. Every major news outlet in Britain was running the same story. Private text messages between Prince William and a former aide had been released. The messages weren't scandalous, but they were personal, private. They showed William struggling with his royal duties, expressing frustration with protocol, questioning whether his children should have normal childhoods away from the spotlight. Out of context, the messages made him look ungrateful, spoiled, human in ways the public wasn't supposed to see. Marcus sat in his car in the parking lot, reading article after article. The comment sections were vicious. People who had loved the Wales family last week now called them entitled, disconnected. The tide was turning, exactly as the voice behind those doors had predicted. His scheduled email would send in 36 hours. Marcus drove home through rush hour traffic, his mind spinning. He had evidence of a conspiracy, but evidence of what exactly? Palace politics. Character assassination? Nothing illegal had been explicitly stated in that recording. A good lawyer could argue it was just strategic communications planning. But Marcus knew better. He had heard the coldness in that voice. The calculation? This wasn't just politics. This was something darker. His phone rang. Unknown number again. Marcus almost didn't answer, but something made him pull over and pick up Mr. Reynolds. A woman's voice this time. Young, nervous. My name is Sophie Chen. I'm a researcher at The Guardian. I was hoping to speak with you about palace security protocols. I can't discuss palace security. Of course I understand. But perhaps we could meet off the record. I'm investigating the recent leaks concerning the Wales family. I believe you might have information. That Marcus hung up. His hands gripped the steering wheel. How did she get his number? How did she know to contact him specifically? Unless someone had told her. Marcus thought about Deputy Chief Bernard's eyes. That smile that didn't reach. Maybe Marcus wasn't the only one who wanted this story out. Maybe someone inside the palace was using him. Had known about the recording all along. Was waiting to see what he would do with it. Maybe Marcus was already a pawn in a game much bigger than he. Understood, he drove the rest of the way home in silence. His flat felt smaller than usual, the walls closing in. Marcus made dinner he couldn't eat. He opened his laptop and stared at the audio file. 23 seconds. That's all it was. 23 seconds of conversation that could change everything or mean nothing. At midnight, Marcus made a decision. He called Sophie Chen back. They met at a cafe in Camden the next morning. Marcus arrived 30 minutes early, watching the entrance, looking for anyone suspicious. Sophie arrived exactly on time, carrying a worn leather bag and looking nothing like the seasoned journalist Marcus had imagined. She was maybe 28, with tired eyes that suggested too many late nights chasing stories. "Thank you for meeting me," she said. Sitting down across from him, Marcus said nothing. Sophie pulled out a tablet. "I've been investigating the leaks, the medical records, the text messages. They didn't come from a hack. They came from inside the palace. But no one will talk to me. Everyone's terrified. Maybe they should be," Marcus said quietly. Sophie looked up at him. "You know something." It wasn't a question. Marcus took a breath. This was the moment. Once he spoke, there was no going back. His career was over. His life would never be the same. But he thought about those children. George, Charlotte, Louis. He thought about William and Kate, who, by all accounts, were good people trying to do an impossible job. He thought about that voice saying, "The Wales family is next." "I have a recording," Marcus said. Sophie's expression didn't change, but her hand tightened on her coffee cup. Of what? A private conversation. From last Tuesday, between someone very senior and their lawyer, discussing a plan to damage the Wales family's reputation, to shift public opinion against them. "Who's on the recording?" Marcus hesitated. This was the final line. Once he said the name, everything would explode. "Before I tell you," Marcus said, "I need to know this will be handled responsibly, not sensationalized. I need to know you understand what this means." Sophie leaned forward. "Mr. Reynolds, if what you're saying is true, this is bigger than a scandal. This is about the integrity of the monarchy itself. But I need to hear that recording. I need to verify it's real and unedited." And then I need to protect you. Because when this comes out, powerful people will want to destroy you. Marcus pulled the USB drive from his pocket, set it on the table between them. There's something else you should know, he said. I think they know I have this. I think they've known from the beginning. And I think they're watching me right now to see what I do with it. Sophie's eyes flicked to the cafe windows. To the other customers? Back to Marcus. Then we need to move fast, she said, taking the drive. And you need to disappear for a few days. Do you have somewhere safe you can go? Marcus thought about his empty flat. His routine? His life that was already over? No, he said. Then I'll arrange something. Sophie stood up. Don't go home. Don't go to work. I'll call you in 2 hours with an address. And Mr. Reynolds? Yes. You're doing the right thing. But as Marcus watched her leave the cafe, USB drive hidden in her bag, he wondered if the right thing would be enough to keep him alive. Asterisk, the safe house was a narrow townhouse in Hammersmith, rented under a name Marcus didn't recognize. Sophie had sent him the address with instructions. Enter through the back alley. Don't turn on lights facing the street. Don't contact anyone. Marcus spent the first night sitting in darkness, watching headlights pass on the street below, wondering if any of them were looking for him. His phone rang at 7 a.m. Sophie. The recording is real, she said without greeting. I had our audio forensics team verify it. No edits. No manipulation. And Marcus, it's worse than you thought. Marcus's stomach tightened. How we found the lawyer? David Hastings. He's worked for the royal family for 15 years, specializes in crisis management and information control. 2 days after your recording, he made payments to 3 separate individuals. We tracked the transactions. One payment went to a former Palisade who had access to the Wales family's private communications. Another went to a tabloid editor known for running smear campaigns. The third went to a private investigator who specializes in digging up dirt on public figures. Marcus closed his eyes. So it's all connected. It's a coordinated attack. And according to our sources, there's more coming. They're planning to release something this week that will devastate the Wales family's reputation. Something big enough to permanently shift how the public sees them. What is it? We don't know yet. But Marcus, we're going to publish your story tomorrow morning. Front page. We have enough evidence now to prove this is real. But I need you to go on record. Your name, your testimony, everything. Marcus felt the weight of it settle on his shoulders. Going on record meant his face would be everywhere. His life would be dissected. He would become the story instead of the guard who stood invisible in corridors. If I do this, Marcus said slowly, what happens to me? Sophie's silence told him everything. There will be legal challenges, she finally said. The palace will claim you violated confidentiality agreements. You'll likely face criminal charges. Best case scenario, you'll never work in security again. Worst case, prison. Yes. Marcus walked to the window. Outside, London was waking up. People heading to work, living normal lives, unaware that the ground beneath the monarchy was about to crack open. I'll do it, Marcus said. But on one condition. You protect the Wales family. This story isn't about bringing them down. It's about exposing the people trying to destroy them. That has to be clear. It will be. I promise. Marcus spent the rest of the day working with Sophie's team. They recorded a video interview, documented everything, built a timeline. By evening, the article was written, fact-checked, and ready to publish. Asterisk at midnight, Marcus couldn't sleep. He kept refreshing the news sites, waiting for the explosion. The Guardian would release the story at 6 a.m. It's timed for maximum impact on the morning news cycle. At 3:17 a.m., his phone rang. Unknown number. Marcus stared at it. Every instinct told him not to answer, but he did anyway. Marcus Reynolds. The voice was measured, authoritative, unmistakable. This is Palace Private Secretary Sir Michael Fletcher. I think we need to talk. Marcus's blood ran cold. The palace private secretary was one of the most powerful people in the royal household. A direct link to the king. How did you get this number? Mr. Reynolds, please understand that we're aware of your situation. We know about your meeting with the Guardian. We know about the article set to publish in 3 hours, and we know you believe you're doing the right thing. Well, I am doing the right thing. Perhaps, but you're also about to trigger a constitutional crisis that could destabilize the monarchy at a moment when the nation needs stability. So I'm asking you, as someone who has served this institution for 11 years, to consider the larger implications of your actions. Marcus felt anger rise in his chest. The larger implications? Someone inside the palace is actively trying to destroy the Wales family. That's the crisis. I'm just exposing it. The situation is more complicated than you understand, Fletcher said carefully. There are dynamics within the royal family that the public doesn't see. Tensions that have existed for years. What you overheard was one conversation taken out of context. That, I heard her say the Wales family is next, Marcus interrupted. I heard them planning attacks, and then those attacks happened. There's no context that makes that acceptable. Fletcher was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was harder. If you publish this story, Mr. Reynolds, you will be destroyed. Professionally, financially, personally. We will use every legal tool available to prosecute you. We will ensure you never work again. Your life as you know it will end. Is this recording worth that? Marcus thought about his flat in Brixton, his quiet life. 11 years of being invisible, of doing his job, of staying safe. Then he thought about those children. About William and Kate trying to protect them while knives were sharpened in the shadows. Yes, Marcus said. It is. He hung up. His hands were shaking. He had just defied the palace itself. There was no going back now. At 5:45 a.m., Marcus received a text from Sophie. Article goes live in 15 minutes. Whatever happens next, you did the right thing. Marcus turned on the television, waited. At exactly 6 a.m., the news anchor's expressions changed. They began reading from teleprompters, their voices serious, urgent. Breaking news this morning as the Guardian newspaper publishes explosive allegations involving the royal household and a coordinated campaign against the Prince and Princess of Wales. According to a royal guard who has come forward. Marcus watched his face appear on screen. The interview he had recorded, his words about duty, about truth, about protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. Within minutes, the story was everywhere. Every news channel, every website. Social media exploded. Marcus's phone began ringing nonstop. He turned it off. Then someone knocked on the door of the safe house. 3 sharp knocks. Marcus froze. No one knew he was here except Sophie and her editor. He moved quietly to the window, looked down at the street. 2 police cars. For officers approaching the building, Marcus felt his heart stop. They had found him, and whatever came next would determine whether he had saved the Wales family or destroyed himself for nothing. The knocking grew louder. Mr. Reynolds, this is the Metropolitan Police. We need you to open the door. Marcus stood in the center of the room, his mind racing through options. The back exit led to a walled garden. No escape. Windows faced a busy street. Nowhere to run. He had known this moment would come. He just hadn't expected it to come so fast. Marcus opened the door. 4 officers stood in the hallway, their expressions professional but not hostile. The lead officer, a woman in her 40s with sergeant stripes, held up her identification. Marcus Reynolds, I'm Sergeant Davies. We need you to come with us to answer questions regarding violations of the Official Secrets Act. You're not under arrest at this time, but we strongly advise you to cooperate. Can I call my lawyer? You can make a call from the station. They didn't handcuff him. Small mercy. Marcus grabbed his jacket and walked between the officers down the narrow stairs and out to the waiting cars. Neighbors watched from windows. Someone had a phone pointed at him, recording by afternoon. That footage would be everywhere. The police station in Hammersmith was exactly like every police station Marcus had ever seen on television. Fluorescent lights. Plastic chairs. The smell of bad coffee and industrial cleaner. They put him in an interview room and left him alone for 40 minutes. Marcus knew what they were doing, letting anxiety build, making him sweat. It was working. When the door finally opened, it wasn't a police interrogator who walked in. It was a woman Marcus had never seen before, carrying a briefcase and wearing an expression that suggested she was extremely expensive. "Mr. Reynolds, my name is Jennifer Hartwell. I'm a barrister, and I've been retained to represent you." Marcus blinked. "By who?" Jennifer sat down across from him and opened her briefcase. "That's confidential for the moment. But you should know that you have significant support from people who believe you did the right thing. Now, the police are going to ask you about your recording, about your security clearances, about what you overheard. I'm going to advise you on how to answer. Are you comfortable with that?" Marcus nodded, too stunned to speak. The interrogation lasted 6 hours. 2 different detectives asking the same questions different ways. Did he know he was violating the Official Secrets Act? Did he intend to harm the royal family? Was he paid by the Guardian for his story? Jennifer shut down the most aggressive questions, reminded them that Marcus had recorded the conversation during official duty, that the content suggested possible criminal conspiracy, that he was protected as a whistleblower under certain circumstances. By the time they released him at 9 p.m., Marcus was exhausted. Jennifer walked him out to the station car park, where a black sedan was waiting. "Get in," she said. "We're taking you somewhere safer." "Where?" "Somewhere the palace's lawyers can't find you easily." Marcus climbed into the car. The driver said nothing, just pulled out into London traffic. Jennifer sat beside Marcus, reviewing documents on her tablet. "The story has gone global," she said without looking up. "BBC, CNN, every major outlet. The palace issued a statement denying the allegations and promising a full investigation. But public sentiment is shifting. People are angry. They want answers." "Has anyone identified the voice on the recording?" Marcus asked quietly. Jennifer finally looked at him. "Everyone has identified the voice. Audio analysts have confirmed the match. The question isn't who it was. The question is, what happens next?" The car drove for over an hour, heading north out of London. They eventually stopped at a country house in Hertfordshire. Surrounded by woods and walls, private, secure. "You'll stay here until the legal situation stabilizes," Jennifer explained as they walked inside. "There's a security team on the grounds. Don't leave without informing them." Marcus felt like he was in a dream or a nightmare. 24 hours ago, he had been a royal guard with a quiet life. Now he was in hiding with armed security and a lawyer who wouldn't tell him who was paying her bills. "Who hired you?" Marcus asked again. "I have a right to know." Jennifer studied him for a moment, then made a decision. "Let's just say that certain members of the royal family are very grateful for what you did. Members who have been targeted by the same campaign you exposed. They want to make sure you're protected." Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. The Wales family. It had to be. They were protecting him because he had tried to protect them. Over the next 3 days, Marcus watched the story evolve from the country house television. The palace launched an internal investigation. David Hastings, the lawyer from the recording, went into hiding. 2 palace aides were suspended. Tabloid editors were questioned. And then, on Thursday evening, Buckingham Palace issued a statement that shocked the nation. The voice on the recording had resigned from all royal duties, effective immediately. A brief statement expressed regret for inappropriate comments made in a private setting and acknowledged that recent events have made continuing in public life untenable. Ugh. Marcus watched the news anchor read the statement. Watched the footage of protests outside Buckingham Palace. Watched royal commentators debate the future of the monarchy. He had won. The truth had come out. The Wales family was safe. But Marcus felt hollow. His phone rang. "Sophie Chen." "Marcus, you need to see this." "See what?" "Check your email now." Marcus opened his laptop. In his inbox was a message from an encrypted address. No subject line. He clicked it open. Inside was a single file. A video. Marcus clicked play. The footage was grainy, clearly from a security camera. It showed a hallway Marcus recognized. The east corridor of Clarence House. The timestamp read Tuesday, 9:47 a.m., the same day Marcus had been there. The video showed Marcus standing outside the double doors. Showed him pull out his recording device. Showed him press the button and hold it against the door. But that wasn't what made Marcus's blood freeze. The video continued for another 30 seconds after Marcus left. It showed the double doors opening. Showed the two figures emerging, except they weren't looking at Marcus. They were looking directly at the camera, and one of them was smiling. A knowing smile. A planned smile. The video ended. Marcus sat in stunned silence as the pieces rearranged in his mind. The broken camera that had called him to that exact location at that exact time. The conversation loud enough to hear through heavy doors. The lawyer who spoke just clearly enough to be recorded. The way no one had actually tried to stop him from leaking the story. They had wanted him to record it. They had wanted him to leak it. Marcus had been used. The entire thing had been staged. But why? His phone rang again. A known number. This time when Marcus answered, the voice on the other end made everything clear. "Mr. Reynolds, I hope you're somewhere comfortable. We need to talk about what really happened. And about what you're going to do next." Asterisk, the voice belonged to David Hastings, the lawyer from the recording. "Before you hang up," he said quickly, "you should know that everything you think you understand is wrong. And if you give me 10 minutes, I'll explain why you were actually helping the people you thought you were fighting." Marcus's grip tightened on the phone. "I'm listening, not over the phone. There's a pub called the White Hart, 3 miles from where you're staying. Be there in 30 minutes. Come alone. If you bring anyone, this conversation never happens, and you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what you really did." The line went dead. Marcus sat motionless, staring at his phone. Every instinct screamed that this was a trap, but the video had shaken something loose in his understanding of events. Nothing made sense anymore. He grabbed his jacket and walked out to where the security team was stationed. "I need to go somewhere," Marcus told the lead guard. "Ms. Hartwell said, you're not to leave, and she can arrest me. I'm going." Marcus drove the country roads in darkness, his mind replaying everything that had happened. The recording. The leaks. The police. The resignation. If it had all been staged, then who was the real target? And who was really pulling the strings? The White Hart was a traditional English pub, half empty on a Thursday night. Marcus spotted Hastings immediately, sitting in a corner booth with a pint of beer he hadn't touched. Marcus slid into the seat across from him. Hastings pulled out a tablet and turned it toward Marcus. "First, you need to understand who I really work for, not the person on that recording." "I work for the king." Marcus said nothing. Hastings pulled up a document. Official palace letterhead. A contract dated 3 months ago. Commissioning Hastings to investigate and expose internal threats to the stability of the Wales family position within the royal hierarchy. For 6 months, Hastings continued. Certain people within the royal household had been conducting a quiet campaign against William and Kate. Nothing illegal. Nothing overt, but a constant drip of negative stories. Strategic leaks. Manipulation of public perception. The king was aware of it. Furious about it. But he had no proof. Nothing he could act on without tearing the family apart. Marcus felt his understanding shift. "So you created proof. It created an opportunity for the person responsible to incriminate themselves. We knew about the broken camera. We scheduled the meeting for that exact time. We made sure you would be the guard on duty that morning because your record showed you had integrity. We spoke loudly enough to be heard. And then we waited to see what you would do." "You used me," Marcus said, anger rising in his voice. "We gave you a choice," Hastings corrected. "You could have deleted that recording. You could have reported it through proper channels where it would have been buried. You could have sold it to the highest bidder. But you didn't. You did exactly what we hoped you would do. You tried to protect people you thought were in danger." Marcus stood up. "You manipulated me into destroying my career, into becoming a criminal." "You're not a criminal," Hastings said calmly. "Check your phone." Marcus pulled out his phone. A news alert had just come through. Crown Prosecution Service announces no charges against Royal Guard Marcus Reynolds, citing public interest whistleblower protections. Marcus stared at the headline. "You're protected," Hastings said. "Your legal fees are paid. Your pension is secure. And more importantly, you exposed a genuine threat to people who didn't deserve what was happening to them. The person behind that campaign has resigned and will never hold influence in the palace again. William and Kate can raise their children without someone actively working to destroy them." "But everyone thinks I betrayed the royal family," Marcus said quietly. "Some people think that. But the people who matter know the truth, including the Wales family themselves. In fact, William asked me to give you something." Hastings pulled an envelope from his jacket and slid it across the table. Marcus opened it. Inside was a handwritten note on Kensington Palace letterhead. The handwriting was distinctive, recognizable from 1,000 official documents Marcus had seen over the years. "Mr. Reynolds, what you did took extraordinary courage. You risked everything to protect people you'd never met, with no guarantee of safety or recognition. That kind of character is rare. My family is safer because of your choice. We won't forget that. And when this storm passes, I hope you'll consider continuing to serve the crown. We need people like you more than ever." William Marcus read it twice, his eyes stinging. "So what now?" Marcus asked, looking up at Hastings. "Now you go back to the country house. You stay quiet for a few weeks while the media moves on to the next scandal. And then, when things settle, you'll receive an offer for a new position. Head of security for a very important household. If you want it." Marcus thought about his small flat in Brixton, his 11 years of standing invisible in corridors, his belief that he was just one guard among hundreds, meaningless in the grand machinery of the monarchy. "I was never invisible, was I?" Marcus said. "You were watching me the whole time." Hastings smiled slightly. "The palace always watches its people, Mr. Reynolds, but usually not to test their integrity, usually to exploit their weaknesses. You didn't have weaknesses we could exploit. That's why you were chosen." Marcus folded the letter carefully and put it in his pocket. He stood up to leave, then stopped. The voice on the recording, Marcus said, "Did she know? Was she part of the plan?" Hastings' expression darkened. "No, that was real. Her anger, her strategy, her willingness to hurt children to advance her position, all of that was genuine. We just gave her rope and waited for her to hang herself with it." Marcus walked out of the pub into the cold night air. Above him, stars scattered across the sky, indifferent to the dramas of humans far below. 3 weeks later, Marcus Reynolds stood in a private office in Kensington Palace, signing a contract. William shook his hand. Kate smiled warmly. And 3 children peeked around the doorway, curious about the new head of security who would be protecting their family. "Thank you," William said simply. "For seeing us as people worth protecting." Marcus thought about that moment in the corridor when he had pressed the record button. The fear, the uncertainty, the belief that some things mattered more than his own safety. "Your Royal Highness," Marcus said. It was never a question. That night, Marcus walked through Kensington Palace's corridors, learning the routes he would patrol, the systems he would oversee, the responsibilities he would carry. He passed paintings of monarchs who had ruled centuries ago, their eyes following his movement just like those paintings in Clarence House. But this time, Marcus wasn't invisible. This time, he was exactly where he was meant to be, and somewhere in London. In a quiet flat with no more royal duties to attend, someone sat alone with their regrets, knowing that the game they had played so carefully had been played, against them even more carefully by people who understood that protecting innocence sometimes requires becoming guilty in the eyes of the world. Marcus Reynolds had learned that truth comes with a price. But he had also learned that some people pay that price willingly, not for glory or recognition, but simply because it's right, and that kind of person is exactly who should be standing guard. When the future of a nation walks by,